When I want to make a photograph that has something close, such as this flower just 2 feet away, and something far away, such as these cliffs in the sun behind, I don't focus either at infinity or at 2 feet. I focus at an imaginary point in between. And I focus at this point here, which is roughly equidistant from infinity over here and 2 feet over here. So that point is called hyperfocal distance. Then I look out at the outer 2 points that I want to be sharp, and I come down and look at the depth of field marks on the lens. Now each lens is different, so you should consult your owner's manual on this one. But on this Nikon lens, there are colored lines, yellow, blue, pink, that correspond to colored numbers of aperture. In this case, those distances fall within the blue lines, which are f16. Just to be safe, I go one more aperture, f22. So in this case, I can take a picture at f22 on a tripod, and I've got everything sharp from the flower here all the way through to infinity. I've been photographing travel and adventure for almost 20 years, and I've been to an awful lot of countries in the world, in Asia, in Africa, New Zealand, Norway, Patagonia. I wish I could go back to those places again and take the knowledge that I have now, the things that I've learned, all the little tricks that I've learned about how to get better pictures, and go back and see the same things that I saw in the past, because I can make so much better photographs. When I come across a scene like this with ponderosa pines and a distant view of Yosemite, and it really looks beautiful, my first inclination is just to take a snapshot. But that's not the best picture I can make. When I see something very beautiful, my 35 millimeter gets very heavy, like a 4x5. And I pretend that I'm using a large format camera. I carefully put it on the tripod. I make all the settings as carefully and as deliberately as I can. I do my composition, make all of my adjustments slowly and deliberately, the way that I would with a 4x5 camera, focusing, exposure, aperture, and the final image that I make is going to have the look of one made with a large format camera in every way, except that it's going to have just a little more film grain because it's on a 35 millimeter format. I don't always like to carry a tripod in the wilderness because it gets awfully heavy. But when I come across a scene like this, and I need to shoot it with a lens of around 200 millimeters, my exposure reading is a 60th of a second. Now, the rule for hand holding a camera is to always shoot at a shutter speed that's faster than a fraction made out of your focal length. So here, I should be shooting at 1/200th or better. What do? There's several ways I can brace my camera and get a sharp picture. One way is to go right down onto a rock or a tree. You don't always find something as convenient as this. This would give me a great picture. The other way is to use your camera bag. You can lie on the ground, put your lens right over it, and shoot like that. Sometimes you need more height. In that case, a tree or a post gives you just what you need. And if you work your camera body in position, don't worry about getting it a little bit dirty. You can sometimes hand hold down to half a second or a second. But my favorite is to use my jacket like a beanbag. A beanbag I don't want to carry because it's an extra piece and it's a little bit heavy. But if I just take off my jacket and use the counter pressure of the fabric pushing up when I push down on it, then I can hand hold that camera almost anywhere and get an extra few stops of steadiness. I could take this picture at, say, half a second. No problem. I drove by and I saw the moon setting at 11 o'clock in the morning. Up here at high altitude, the moon stands out against a dark blue sky, and the exposure for the moon is exactly the same as daylight. So here in midday, I can get the moon behind a dead tree in a dark blue sky, setting behind a ridge. And it looks just fabulous. I think I might be able to unset the moonset by running down this hill and getting the moon above the horizon again, so I'm going to go for it. Wow, this is going to be neat. God, I can see it right on the ridge. It's going to be fabulous if I can set up here fast enough. Wow. Got it. Wow. Isn't that neat? By getting down here, I was able to unset the moonset, make the moon come up above the ridge, choose my position, and wait for it to come down across the horizon a second time. And now that I got it here, if I like it, want to do it again and have a third take, all I need to do is run down the hill farther. And I'll get a third take at it. So I can do that with sunrises, sunsets, moonrises, moonsets, so long as the terrain cooperates with me. Well, that was really neat. Lots of times I'll do that. I'll sort of see something like a moon and think, okay, what could I do with that? And think what else is around and think about a picture that doesn't exist yet. And kind of watch the moon, and in that case I thought, well, what could go in front of the moon? Well, a dead tree. And I want it right on the ridgeline. So I just kept looking and tried to find a position where those two things coincided. They did. I might have found that by chance, but the odds of it were really, really small. But when you think about one thing first, and then watch it and try to figure out how to juxtapose it with something else, then you can make pictures happen without seeing them. It's not being in the right place at the right time and saying, oh, there's a picture here. It's mentally putting together the picture in your mind and figuring out where you want to be to get that picture. When I'm doing outdoor photography, I'll look at the newspaper, and if it says clear and sunny, no winds, no problems with road conditions, I know that's a horrible day to take pictures. But if it says traveler's advisory, then I'll go out and figure that when that storm ends, there's going to be some fantastic situations and beautiful light, because it's at the end of storms when you have that transition. The edges of things in nature are the most beautiful. The edge of the continent next to the sea, the edge of a meadow next to a forest, and the edges of light where light tapers off into dark, or different colors of light come together. One of the real keys to outdoor landscape photography is understanding natural optical phenomena and being able to predict when something is going to happen. And I understand the way rainbows happen, and I can look at a lighting situation and figure out a rainbow is about to happen, and it's going to be over there, and I should be over here, and go over there, and if a rainbow is going to happen, I'll be in the right place at the right time. And all too often, you'll see a rainbow, chase it, by the time you get there, it's gone. Rainbows only occur in a 42-degree arc around what's called the anti-solar point, a point exactly opposite the sun. And that means that if the sun is more than 42 degrees above the horizon, the rainbow is hidden from view. It's going to be out of sight below the horizon. So you have to have a low angle of the sun, look opposite it, and then look at a 42-degree arc and on either side and see if you see a rainbow. And it can't be in cold air. It can only be in air that will have raindrops instead of ice crystals and have direct sunlight on those raindrops. And in those situations, I can predict where a rainbow will be. This is fantastic. This is just so beautiful. Perfect light. And having the water around it and the dark shadowy background really adds to it. For a good rainbow shot, the picture should stand on its own without a rainbow in it. Gotta wipe my lens off here. So I always try to find a scene that would look great without the rainbow. And if I can have a rainbow in it too, then I've got the icing on the cake. True to legend, rainbows recede when you try to chase them. The reason for that is that with each step you take, a new rainbow forms in a new set of water droplets. Well, you can use this to your advantage too. If you try to go towards a rainbow, then it'll keep going in front of you. But if you go sideways, it'll move with you. And once in Tibet, I saw an afternoon rainbow that was kind of dim over a meadow, and it formed an arc, and way off to the side was the Dalai Lama's palace. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I could make that rainbow coincide with the golden roofs of the palace. And I started to walk and then run a bit, and I realized that this was an incredible opportunity. Eventually I ditched my camera bag, grabbed one camera, one lens, 2 rolls of film, and started running at 12,000 feet. Every few hundred yards, I'd stop and take an insurance shot as the rainbow moved closer and closer to the palace. Finally, I got to the point where the rainbow appeared to be coming out of the palace roofs, and another factor happened. A hole opened up in the clouds, and a beam of light came right onto the palace, and I was able to make one of the most satisfying images I've ever made. A subtle but very important component of composition is something that I call image maturity. A mature subject is one that's well known to your audience. If you take a photograph of a deer, for example, it's a mature subject. Everyone knows what a deer looks like. If you photograph a deer head-on, still, full frame in a meadow, it's a pretty boring photograph. But perhaps an image of just the deer's ears sticking out of the grass in the back of the meadow in the back of your composition would really be an inspiring photograph. And someone would say, wow, look at that. See those deer's ears back there? But change that animal to a snow leopard and see just the ears, or maybe the ears and eyes of a snow leopard peeking out of the grass. And your audience is going to have a very different reaction. It's an immature subject. They don't know it. And they're going to think, what a pity he didn't get a photograph of the whole animal. Another favorite subject of mine are God beams, technically called crepuscular rays. And these are those wonderful shafts of light that you see coming out of clouds with the sun behind them, or perhaps into a room or a temple through a skylight where you have beams of light that appear to be solid. And what you're actually seeing is sunlit vapor or haze or dust. And the border of that with shadow is something that's enhanced in its appearance on film. If you can see just the hint of a God beam in the sky or in a room, then film is going to enhance the difference between the lightness and darkness. When a direct light source appears in a photograph as a many-rayed star, it can be either a trick, something completely natural, or something in between. Natural sun stars appear in a photograph when an object that's actually in the photograph interferes with the sun. You can put the sun partially behind a tree limb, an edge of a cliff, a building, or something like that, and as the sun's rays try to bend around that object, diffraction happens, and that causes a star effect. The smaller the aperture you use, the longer the rays of the star. So by consciously choosing, say, f16 or f22, you can make the star much more effective than it would be at just an average aperture.